The wind was kicking dust across the lot when I rolled into Buckhorn Station, just looking for a hot plate in a quiet corner. Instead, I walked right into a mess that didn't belong to me, but somehow felt like it did. A young woman in a faded red jacket was arguing low and shaky with the cashier, trying to return groceries she'd already opened just to scrape together enough cash for gas. Nobody paid her any mind. Nobody but me. I'd seen that kind of pride before. Heavy. Hungry. The kind that bruises deeper than any punch. So I stepped in, didn't say a word, and covered her bill. Didn't stick around for a thank you either. Just tipped my hat, grabbed my coffee, and hit the road. Didn't think much of it until 3 weeks later, when I found a mud-stained envelope duct-taped to my driver's side mirror with my full name printed in shaky blue ink. Inside was a broken house key, a crumpled photo of the girl from the station, and a single sheet of paper with 5 words scrawled across the top. He's taken everything from me. On the back, a bank transaction list showing money pulled from an account, her name scratched out, her uncle's written in its place. Whoever left that note didn't sign it, didn't ask politely. They begged, quietly, desperately. And somehow, out of everyone on the road, they chose me. Before we roll into this mess, do me a favor. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Helps me know who I'm hauling these stories for. Now buckle up. We're going deeper than a kindness this time. Name's Wade Hollister. Been driving semis for near about 28 years now. Mostly running freight through Arkansas, Oklahoma, and the boot heel of Missouri. I'm 54 years old. Got more miles on me than most engines. And I learned a long time ago that the road don't care about your story. It just keeps rolling whether you're on it or not. I drive for a mid-size outfit called Riverbend Logistics out of Fort Smith, Arkansas. Nothing fancy. We haul construction materials, agricultural equipment, occasional oversized loads when the permits come through. The pay's steady, the routes are familiar, and the company leaves me alone as long as I keep my nose clean and my logs honest. That's all I need. I ain't married. Never have been. Had a girl once back in my 20s, but the road got between us, same way it gets between most folks and their plans. After that, I just figured I was better off solo. Driving suits me. Always has. You get used to your own company out here. You get used to diners where nobody knows your name, motels where the sheets smell like industrial detergent, and truck stops where the only conversation is about fuel prices and weather. But here's the thing about being invisible. You start noticing other invisible people. The ones working third shift at the Pilot. The ones sleeping in their cars at rest stops because they got nowhere else to go. The single moms buying day-old bread at gas station mini-marts. You see them because you are them, in a way. Just trying to get by without making a fuss. And when you see someone struggling, really struggling, sometimes you help. Not for recognition, not for karma points or a pat on the back. You help because you can, and because you know what it's like when nobody else does. That's my philosophy anyway. Has been for years. I got a regular route that takes me through a little nothing town called Buckhorn, Oklahoma. It's one of those places that used to matter back when Route 66 was the main artery and small town America was still breathing strong. Now it's just a gas station, a grain elevator, a shuttered motel, and a handful of houses that look like they're holding on out of spite more than anything else. But Buckhorn Station, the truck stop there, it's got good coffee, a decent grill, and a woman named Dottie who's been running the register since before I started driving. She knows my order without asking. Black coffee, chicken fried steak if they got it, eggs and toast if they don't. I stop there once, sometimes twice a month, depending on the loads. Over the years, I got to know a few of the locals. Not well, but enough to nod at. There's a retired trucker named Rigger Thompson who lives in a single wide about a mile up the road and comes into the station most mornings for coffee and gossip. There's Deputy Lee Parker, a quiet woman in her 30s who patrols the county and sometimes eats lunch at the counter. There's the usual cast of farmers, construction workers, and drifters passing through. I never wanted to be part of a community, exactly. But I guess after enough years stopping in the same place, you become part of it whether you want to or not. That's how I ended up in the middle of Mara Coleman's nightmare. It was a Tuesday evening in late September when I first saw her. The sun was sinking low, casting that orange glow that makes everything look either beautiful or desolate depending on your mood. I pulled into Buckhorn Station around 7, parked my rig near the back of the lot, and walked inside. The place was mostly empty. A couple of farmers nursing coffee at the counter, Dottie restocking cigarettes behind the register. The smell of fried food and diesel fuel mixing in the air. I was heading for my usual booth when I heard the voice. "I'm sorry, please, I need to return these." I looked over, and there was a young woman standing at the counter, maybe early 20s, wearing a faded red jacket that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she had dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in a week. She was holding a bag of groceries, bread, peanut butter, a carton of eggs, and trying to hand them back to Dottie. "They're already open, honey," Dottie said, not unkindly. "I can't take them back." "I know, the girl's voice cracked. "I need the money for gas. I thought I had enough, but I don't, and I need to get home." Dottie shook her head. "Store policy. Once it's open, it's sold." The girl's shoulders sagged. She stood there for a moment, staring at the groceries like she was trying to will them into something valuable, and then quietly set the bag on the counter and turned to leave. Nobody else in the station even looked up. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the way her hands were shaking. Maybe it was the look on her face, that particular mix of shame and exhaustion I'd seen too many times in too many mirrors. So I stepped in, didn't say a word, and covered her bill. Didn't stick around for a thank you either. Just tipped my hat, grabbed my coffee, and hit the road. Didn't think much of it. Until 3 weeks later, when I found a mud-stained envelope duct-taped to my side mirror with my full name printed in shaky blue ink. Inside was a broken house key, a crumpled photo of the girl from the station, and a single sheet of paper with 5 words scrawled across the top. "He's taken everything from me." On the back, a bank transaction list showing money pulled from an account, her name scratched out, her uncle's written in its place. Whoever left that note didn't sign it, didn't ask politely. They begged, quietly, desperately. And somehow, out of everyone on the road, they chose me. Before we roll into this mess, do me a favor. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Helps me know who I'm hauling these stories for. Now buckle up. We're going deeper than a kindness this time. Name's Wade Hollister. Been driving semis for near about 28 years now. Mostly running freight through Arkansas, Oklahoma, and the boot heel of Missouri. I'm 54 years old. Got more miles on me than most engines. And I learned a long time ago that the road don't care about your story. It just keeps rolling whether you're on it or not. I drive for a mid-size outfit called Riverbend Logistics out of Fort Smith, Arkansas. Nothing fancy. We haul construction materials, agricultural equipment, occasional oversized loads when the permits come through. The pay's steady, the routes are familiar, and the company leaves me alone as long as I keep my nose clean and my logs honest. That's all I need. I ain't married, never have been. Had a girl once back in my 20s, but the road got between us, same way it gets between most folks and their plans. After that, I just figured I was better off solo. Driving suits me. Always has. You get used to your own company out here. You get used to diners where nobody knows your name, motels where the sheets smell like industrial detergent, and truck stops where the only conversation is about fuel prices and weather. But here's the thing. about being invisible, you start noticing other invisible people. The ones working third shift at the pilot, the ones sleeping in their cars at rest stops because they got nowhere else to go, the single moms buying day-old bread at gas station mini-marts. You see them because you are them, in a way, just trying to get by without making a fuss. And when you see someone struggling, really struggling, sometimes you help. Not for recognition, not for karma points or a pat on the back. You help because you can, and because you know what it's like when nobody else does. That's my philosophy anyway. Has been for years. I got a regular route that takes me through a little nothing town called Buckhorn, Oklahoma. It's one of those places that used to matter back when Route 66 was the main artery and small town America was still breathing strong. Now it's just a gas station,
I pulled the envelope out of my jacket and showed them the bank statements. This real? Dottie leaned in, squinting at the numbers. Lord have mercy. Yeah, that's real. That's Mara's inheritance account. Or it was. Who gave this to me? Rigger and Dottie exchanged a look. Could be anybody, Ricker said slowly. Randall's got employees. Some of them worked for Frank first. Knew Mara when she was a kid. My guess? Somebody with access to the books who's got a conscience but can't afford to lose their job. Why me? Dottie smiled sadly. Because you helped her, Wade. And in a town this small, word gets around. Somebody knew you'd care. I spent the rest of that day asking questions. Drove out to the Coleman construction yard on the edge of Wilburton. A sprawling lot full of equipment, trucks, and a double-wide trailer that served as the office. Randall's name was on the sign now. Coleman Construction. Randall Coleman, President. I didn't go inside, just sat in my truck across the road watching. Workers came and went, loading materials, moving machinery. The operation looked busy, profitable. Whatever Randall was doing, he was keeping the business running. But at whose expense? I called Rigger that evening. I need to know more about this will, how Randall's pulling this off. Meet me at Buckhorn Station tomorrow morning. I'll bring what I got. The next morning, I sat across from Rigger in a booth while he spread out a stack of papers, photocopies, printouts, handwritten notes. He'd been collecting information, piecing together the story. Frank's will was straightforward. Everything goes to Mara when she turns 25, or immediately if she's deemed capable of managing the estate by the executor. That's Randall. Until then, Randall's supposed to act as guardian, managing the money for her benefit. But he's not. No, he's moving money into shell accounts, selling off assets below value, and keeping the proceeds. He's also paying himself an executor fee that's way above what's reasonable. By the time Mara turns 25, there won't be anything left. How's he getting away with it? Because probate courts are overworked and underfunded. As long as Randall files the right paperwork and nobody objects, the judge rubber stamps it. And Mara can't afford a lawyer to object. I sat back, anger simmering in my gut. So what do we do? Rigger looked at me, surprised. We? Wait, this ain't your fight. It is now. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right, first thing we need is proof, not just bank statements. Anybody can fudge those. We need documents Randall can't explain away. The original will, for one, and any amendments he might have filed. Where would those be? County courthouse. Probate records are public, but you got to know what to look for. And let's go look. 2 days later, I was sitting in the McCurtain County Courthouse in Idabel, flipping through probate files while Rigger stood guard at the door. The records clerk had been skeptical at first, but I'd told her I was a family friend looking into estate matters, and she'd let me into the records room with a warning not to remove anything. I found Frank Coleman's file easily enough. The original will was there, just like Rigger said. Straightforward, everything to Mara. But there was also an amendment, filed 2 weeks after Frank's death. The amendment was signed by Randall and notarized by a local lawyer named Douglas Kemp. It gave Randall expanded authority to manage the estate, including the ability to sell assets and move funds as necessary for estate preservation. I took photos of everything with my phone, then kept digging. That's when I found it. A second copy of the will, burnt along one edge like someone had tried to destroy it, shoved in the back of the file folder. This version had no amendment, just Frank's original wishes. Someone had tried to bury it, but they hadn't finished the job. I photographed that too, then carefully put everything back. When I walked out of the courthouse, Rigger was waiting by my truck. "You find anything?" I showed him the photos. Randall forged an amendment. The burnt copy, that's the real will. Somebody tried to destroy it. Rigger whistled low. "You know what this means?" "Yeah, Randall's not just stealing. He's committing fraud. And if we can prove it, we can stop him." I looked at the courthouse, then back at Rigger. "We're going to need more than this. We need someone who can testify, someone who knows what Randall did. The whistleblower, whoever left you that envelope, we got to find him." That night, I drove out to Randall's construction yard after hours, parked my truck a quarter-mile down the road and walked in on foot, sticking to the shadows. The lot was dark except for a single light over the office trailer. I wasn't planning to break in. I'm not a criminal. But I wanted to see who was working late, who might be willing to talk. I crouched behind a stack of pallets and waited. Around midnight, a man came out of the trailer, mid-40s, wearing a Coleman construction jacket, carrying a duffel bag. He locked the door, looked around nervously, then walked to a beat-up Ford Ranger and drove off. I memorized the license plate, then called Rigger the next morning. "See if you can find out who drives a white Ford Ranger, plate XKL 7239. Rigger called back an hour later. "That's Danny Voss. He's Randall's site manager. Been with the company since Frank was alive." "Think he's our whistleblower?" "Could be, but approaching him's risky. If he tips off Randall, we're done." "Then we watch him, see where he goes, who he talks to. If he's the one that left that envelope, he'll slip up eventually." Over the next week, I followed Danny Voss. Not every day, I still had loads to run, but when I could. I watched him leave the construction yard, stop at gas stations, eat lunch at a diner in Wilburton. He seemed nervous, always looking over his shoulder, always checking his phone. Then 8 days after I first saw him, he met someone. It was late afternoon, and I was parked across the street from a diner when I saw Danny walk in. 10 minutes later, someone else arrived. A young woman in a faded red jacket. Mara Coleman. They sat in a booth by the window, talking low and urgent. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Danny sliding papers across the table. Mara looking at them, her expression hardening. After about 20 minutes, Danny left. Mara stayed, staring at the papers like they were a death sentence. I waited until Danny was gone, then walked into the diner. Mara looked up as I approached. Recognition flickered across her face. "You," she said quietly. "The guy from the gas station." I nodded. "Wade Hollister. You got my envelope." "I did." She stared at me for a long moment, eyes filling with something between hope and disbelief. "Why are you here?" I slid into the booth across from her. "Because somebody asked me to help, and because I don't like thieves." Mara's lip trembled, but she held it together. "You don't know what you're getting into. My uncle, he's dangerous. He's got money, lawyers, connections. He'll bury you." "Let him try. Now tell me everything." Mara told me everything. We sat in that diner for 2 hours while she laid out the whole story. How her father had built Coleman Construction from nothing. How he'd promised her it would be hers someday. How he died so suddenly she never got to say goodbye. How her Uncle Randall had swooped in with condolences and promises to take care of everything, then systematically locked her out of her own inheritance. He moved me out of the house 3 weeks after the funeral, said it needed to be sold to cover estate taxes. But there are no estate taxes. Dad had everything set up in a trust. Randall just wanted me gone so I couldn't see what he was doing. And the money? He transferred most of it into accounts I can't access, told the bank he was the legal guardian and I was emotionally unstable. They believed him. Hands clenched around her coffee cup. I tried to hire a lawyer, but nobody wants to take on Randall. He's too connected, knows all the judges, plays golf with the county commissioners. I'm just some kid without $1 to my name. What about Danny Voss? Mara looked up sharply. You know about Danny? Saw you two meeting. He's the one who left me that envelope, isn't he? She hesitated, then nodded. Danny worked for my dad for 15 years. He was loyal to him. When Randall started moving money and selling equipment under value, Danny noticed. He tried to confront Randall about it, and Randall threatened to fire him. Danny's got a family, 2 kids in school, a mortgage he can barely pay. He loses this job, he loses everything. So he came to you? He's been feeding me documents for months. Bank statements, equipment sale receipts, payroll records showing Randall's been paying himself triple what he's worth. But I don't know what to do with it. I don't have a lawyer. Don't have money for one. Don't have anyone. I reached across the table and put my hand on hers. You do now. The next day, I met with Rigger and showed him everything Mara had given me. Danny's documents were damning. Clear evidence of asset stripping, inflated executor fees, fraudulent accounting. Combined with the burnt will and forged amendment I'd found at the courthouse, we had a case. A real one.
And if you don't stand up, Mara loses everything. Her father's life's work, gone. You think that's what Frank would have wanted? Danny's jaw tightened. He stared at the table for a long moment, then let out a shaky breath. What do you need? Your testimony. In court. On the record. Randall will destroy me. Maybe, but we'll destroy him first. 5 days later, Patricia filed a motion with the McCurtain County Probate Court to remove Randall Coleman as executor and freeze all estate assets pending investigation. The motion included the burnt will, the forged amendment, Danny's financial documents, and a sworn affidavit from Danny Voss detailing Randall's fraudulent activities. Randall's response was immediate and vicious. 2 days after the filing, I got a call from my dispatcher. Wade, we got a problem. DOT called. Said they received a complaint about your truck. Safety violations, falsified logs, the whole 9 yards. That's bullshit. My truck's clean and my logs are spotless. I know, but they're sending an inspector anyway. You're grounded until it's resolved. I hung up and called Rigger. Randall's retaliating. He's trying to shut me down. Yeah, he's doing the same to Danny. City inspector showed up at his house this morning, claimed there were code violations, wants to condemn the place. Can he do that? If he's got the right people in his pocket, yeah. This was escalating faster than I'd expected. Randall wasn't just defending himself, he was going on the offensive, using every connection and lever of power he had to crush anyone who stood against him. 3 days later, the DOT inspector showed up. I met him at a truck stop outside Fort Smith, and he went through my rig with a fine-tooth comb, checked my brakes, my lights, my logbook, my cargo securement. After 2 hours, he stood up and dusted off his hands. "You're clean," he said. "Whoever filed that complaint was lying." "Can you put that in writing?" "Already did." He handed me a report. "For what it's worth, I've seen this before. Someone with money trying to harass a driver who pissed him off. Don't let him win." I thanked him and got back on the road, but I knew this wasn't over. Randall was testing us, seeing how far he could push before we broke. He was about to find out we didn't break easy. 1 week after the probate motion was filed, Randall's lawyer filed a counter motion, a restraining order against me, Mara, and Danny,
claiming we were harassing him and interfering with estate business. The motion was full of lies, claiming I'd trespassed on his property, that Mara had made threats, that Danny had stolen company documents. Patricia called me as soon as she saw it. This is a stalling tactic. He's trying to tie us up in court so we can't move forward with the estate case. Will it work? Not if we show up to the hearing and prove he's full of it. The hearing was set for 4 days later. I showed up at the courthouse in Idabel with Mara, Danny, and Patricia. Randall was there too, sitting at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, a slick-looking guy named Douglas Kemp, the same notary who'd signed off on the forged will amendment. The judge listened to both sides. Randall's lawyer painted me as a troublemaker with no legal standing, Mara as an unstable young woman trying to undermine her guardian, Danny as a disgruntled employee. Patricia countered with the facts, the documents, the timeline, the evidence of fraud. The judge wasn't buying Randall's story. Motion for restraining order denied. But I am concerned about the allegations of fraud. I'm ordering a full audit of the Coleman estate, and I'm appointing an independent administrator to oversee it pending resolution. Randall's face went white. His lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. We're done here. As we walked out of the courthouse, Mara grabbed my arm. Did we win? I said, we won the battle. War's not over yet. I was right. 2 days after the hearing, I was driving back to Fort Smith when my phone rang. It was Rigger, and his voice was tight with panic. Wade, you need to get the buckhorn, now. What happened? Somebody ran me off the road. Truck's totaled. I'm in the hospital. I pulled over, heart pounding. Are you okay? Busted ribs, concussion, but Wade, it wasn't an accident. The guy who hit me, he swerved into my lane on purpose. I saw his face. It was one of Randall's crew. I clenched the wheel. Where's Mara? Don't know. I tried calling her. She's not answering. I hung up and called Mara. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I called Danny. No answer. My gut twisted. Randall was escalating again, but this time it wasn't just legal maneuvers, it was violence. I drove straight to Mara's trailer. Her car was gone, but the door was hanging open. Lock busted. I went inside. The place was tashed. Papers scattered, furniture overturned, like someone had torn through looking for something. I found her phone on the floor. Screen cracked. My blood ran cold. I called Patricia. Randall's got her. What? Mara's gone. Her place is torn apart. I think Randall grabbed her. Wait, if he's taken her, that's kidnapping. You need to call the police. I'm calling you first. Who's the sheriff around here? Deputy Lee Parker handles this area. But Wade, be careful. She's been on Randall's side before. I don't care. I called the sheriff's office and asked for Deputy Parker. She picked up on the third ring. Parker. This is Wade Hollister. I need to report a missing person, Mara Coleman. Her trailer's been broken into and she's gone. There was a pause. Mr. Hollister, I know who you are, and I know about your case with Randall Coleman. This isn't about the case. This is about a missing girl. I'll send someone out to check the trailer. But Mr. Hollister, I'd advise you to back off this thing before it gets worse. It's already worse. Rigger Thompson is in the hospital. Mara's missing. How much worse does it need to get? Another pause. Then, quieter. Meet me at Buckhorn Station in an hour. Alone. She hung up. I met Deputy Parker at the gas station. She was leaning against her cruiser, arms crossed, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. You wanted to talk? She looked around, making sure we were alone. I'm going to tell you something, and if you repeat it, I'll deny it. I'm listening. Randall Coleman has been paying off people in this county for years. Judges, commissioners, even some of my colleagues. I can't prove it, but I know it's happening. And I know if I go after him, I'll lose my job or worse. So you're just letting him get away with it? I didn't say that. I said I can't go after him publicly. But if someone did, someone with evidence, someone with standing, I wouldn't get in their way. Where's Mara? Parker looked me in the eye. I don't know, but I know Randall's got a storage facility outside Broken Bow where he keeps equipment. If I were looking for someone he didn't want found, that's where I'd start. You're telling me to break the law? I'm telling you I can't help you officially. But if you happen to find her, and if you happen to call me after, I'd respond real quick. She got in her cruiser and drove off, leaving me standing in the parking lot. I drove to Broken Bow. The storage facility was a chain-link compound full of shipping containers and construction equipment, guarded by a single floodlight and a padlock that looked like it had been there since the 90s. I parked down the road, grabbed a flashlight, and hopped the fence. The place was a maze of containers and machinery, shadows stretching long in the dim light. I moved carefully, checking each container, listening for any sound. Then I heard it, a muffled voice, coming from a container near the back. I ran to it, yanked on the door. Locked. I looked around, found a pry bar leaning against a forklift, and jammed it into the latch. The metal groaned, then gave way. The door swung open. Mara was inside, hands zip-tied, duct tape over her mouth, eyes wide open with fear. I pulled the tape off and cut the zip ties with my pocket knife. "You're okay," I said. "I got you." She threw her arms around me, shaking. He said if I didn't drop the case, he'd... It's over. Come on. I helped her out of the container and back to my truck. Once we were clear, I called Deputy Parker. "Found her. Randall's storage facility in Broken Bow. Send backup." On my way. Within 30 minutes, Parker showed up with 3 other deputies. They arrested the security guard at the facility, who folded immediately and admitted Randall had paid him to hold someone for a few hours. Parker called in the state police, and by morning, Randall Coleman was in custody. The charges were serious: kidnapping, witness intimidation, assault for Rigger's accident, and obstruction of justice. Combined with the fraud case, Randall was looking at decades in prison.
I climbed back into my truck and pulled out onto the highway. As I drove, I thought about everything that happened. About a young woman trying to return groceries. About an envelope left on my mirror. About choosing to help when nobody else would. The road stretched out ahead of me, same as always. Miles of asphalt, endless horizon, the hum of the diesel engine beneath my feet. But something felt different now. Lighter, maybe. Like I'd proven something to myself. That you don't need to be rich or powerful to fight corruption. You just need to be stubborn enough to care. 6 months after that, I got a call from Deputy Lee Parker. Randall's trial had concluded. He'd been found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. Douglas Kemp, the lawyer who'd helped forge the will, lost his license and was facing his own charges. And the state launched an investigation into corruption in McCurtain County, leading to the resignation of 2 county commissioners and a judge. Mara's co-op was thriving. She'd hired 15 workers, bought new equipment, and was bidding on contracts across the region. Rigger was teaching a logistics course at the local community college. Danny Voss had been promoted to operations manager at the co-op, finally able to work without fear. And me? I was still driving, still hauling loads through Arkansas and Oklahoma, still stopping at Buckhorn Station for coffee and chicken fried steak. But now, when I walked in, people knew my name. They'd nod, shake my hand, buy me a cup of coffee without asking. Dottie started keeping my usual order ready before I even sat down. I didn't do it for recognition, but I won't lie, it felt good to be part of something bigger than myself. To know that a small act of kindness had snowballed into real change. The thing about the road is this: you meet a lot of people. Some you remember, most you don't. But every now and then, you cross paths with someone at exactly the right moment. When they need help, when you can give it, when the universe lines up just so. I met Mary Coleman at one of those moments, and I could have walked away. Should have, probably. It wasn't my fight, wasn't my family, wasn't my problem. But I've learned something in 28 years of driving. The world's full of powerful people who think they can get away with anything. People who use money and connections to crush anyone who gets in their way. People who count on the rest of us being too tired, too scared, or too broke to fight back. And maybe most of the time they're right. But not always. Sometimes a trucker with nothing but time and a stubborn streak decides to care. Sometimes a retired driver with too much knowledge decides to help. Sometimes a deputy with a conscience decides to look the other way at the right moment. Sometimes a whistleblower with everything to lose decides to do the right thing anyway. And when those people come together, when they decide that justice matters more than comfort, that truth matters more than convenience, powerful people fall. I've seen it happen. I made it happen. And I'm telling you this story because I want you to know, if you ever find yourself staring down someone powerful, someone corrupt, someone who thinks they own the world, you're not alone. There are people like me out here. People who will show up when you need them. People who won't back down just because the fight's hard. You just gotta ask. Or leave an envelope on the right truck. Now here's the thing. This story, it's not unique. There are Randall Colemans everywhere. Bosses, landlords, executives, officials, people who think power means they can do whatever they want. And there are Maras everywhere too. Good people getting crushed by systems that weren't built for them. But there's also Wades. People who see injustice and can't walk away. People who will risk their own comfort to make things right. This channel is for those people. For the ones who stood up to corrupt bosses, fought back against crooked landlords, exposed fraud, or just refused to let the powerful get away with it. For the drivers, the workers, the regular folks who became heroes just by giving a damn. So if this story hits you in the chest, if it reminded you that one person can make a difference, that the little guy can win, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Or better yet, tell me if you've ever had to fight someone powerful. I want to hear your stories. Because the more we talk about this stuff, the more we share these victories, the harder it gets for the corrupt to hide. Every story told is a warning to the next Randall Coleman. We're watching, we're ready, and we won't back down. Thanks for rolling with me on this one. Stay safe out there. Keep your eyes open. And remember, if you ever see someone who needs help, even a stranger, even when it's not your problem, maybe make it your problem anyway. You never know what kind of justice you might set in motion. I'll see you on the road.